from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Cash rents and a check on the resiliency of the farm economy. In agribusiness, what to expect from USDA.
Well, I think to answer that question, you have to look at what's the attitude of the funds toward the commodities.
The Dairy Report surveys the damage from Hurricane Irma. And Ag Tech is flying high in Cambodia, the benefits and challenges of using drones in Southeast Asia.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. USDA is heading into lockup this morning as the National Ag Statistics Service prepares its monthly supply-demand data and latest crop production estimates. We'll have those numbers on agweb.com shortly after the release at 11 a.m. Central Time. Meanwhile, NASS just out with its latest cash rents report. It shows the average cropland cash rent at $136 an acre. Now that's unchanged from the previous year. The national average rent peaked in 2015 at $144 an acre. Now, according to our partners over at Landowner Newsletter, there was weakness in the Corn Belt states as Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, and Nebraska all saw $3 to $5 per acre declines. Now, as we mentioned, USDA is revising its net farm income forecast, putting it in the green, up 13% from last year. Much of that growth coming from the livestock sector, not grains. Despite 2017 turbulence, economists continue to be impressed by the resiliency on the farm. Tyne Morgan reports.
The grim outlook on the farm economy is a broken record for farmers with 4 straight years of negative net farm income. But after multiple years of declining cash flow, signs are modestly pointing up.
I think it's probably better than we expected last year, but still nowhere near where we want it to be.
Jackson Takish is an economist for Farmer Mac. In the latest quarterly edition of The Feed, Farmer Mac revealing livestock producers faring better than their grain counterparts so far in 2017.
If you look at the dairy industry, if you look at the cattle industry, hogs, poultry, mostly on the livestock sectors, cash receipts look to be up this year compared to 16, much higher than we expected at the beginning of the year.
Farmer Mac says despite the crumbling corn prices, the overall ag economy is showing signs of rebounding.
I think we're on our way. I do think that the declines in net farm income have started to level off, and we saw a bounce this year in net farm income and net cash income is what we're expecting. So maybe we're close to that bottom now.
But it's those farming areas heavily reliant upon row crops still showing stress.
In our area, I would anticipate we're going to see flat incomes at best. Obviously, there's going to be some outliers, but I would say across the board, we're looking at flat incomes in contrast to last year.
Hoskins says the yield story is still unwritten, but once combines roll this fall, a more accurate financial picture will be portrayed.
We're definitely seeing people that are going through some stress financially, no question. I think one of the things that we're really looking for is the stress in working capital.
Hoskins says after harvest, when producers push the pencil to paper, if red is the final number, conversation is key.
Don't be afraid to have that conversation with your lender, with your spouse, with the person helping you with marketing, because just because it doesn't pencil out next year, candidly, there were operations that ran into situations this year where it didn't pencil out.
Hoskins says in some cases there's still enough working capital reserve to offset down years, but it's that working capital that's helped many producers survive the economic headwinds.
That's a surprising factor in there, that delinquencies are up, bankruptcies, foreclosures are up, but not what you'd expect. We've had 4 straight years of declining farm income.
So the delinquency rates are still very low. I would have expected more of a movement if we were going to have a really significant downturn in the farm financial sector. So they're still pretty low historically, but they are up from the absolute lows that we saw back in 2016. So that was kind of the bottom of the level of farm delinquencies at banks and farm credits. So it's up a little bit, but it's not up double or triple that the levels that we saw maybe in 2009 during the financial crisis and the Great Recession. So we're not seeing any sort of jumps like we did back then. So I think that's a pretty positive sign looking forward.
That resiliency is one reason Takish has a slightly more positive outlook on the farm economy.
Well, I got to give the ag economy somewhat of like a B minus, maybe upgraded from a C earlier this year. just because we have seen the livestock, that half of the ag sector is doing much better than we expected. So they're kind of raising the tide a little bit.
Well, Goss foresees continued pain for producers for the next few months. It's the start of a new calendar year that could bring a fresh start, improving from a C grade today.
When you put livestock in with grains, it gets better. And so I'd give it a C, and that C I expect to move up to B by Q1 of 2018.
All right, thanks, Ty. Now, USDA's latest crop progress report showing the Midwest corn crop still lagging behind in maturity. 21% now mature, 10 points behind the 5-year average. Illinois and Minnesota are 15 points behind. Iowa and Missouri both 13 points behind. Now, 5% is harvested. That's a point behind the 5-year average. The overall condition unchanged, 61% now called good to excellent. Looking at cotton, the overall condition rating dropping 2 points, 63% now good to excellent. Texas seeing a 4-point decline this week. Oklahoma cotton with a 7-point drop, but still 90% rated as good to excellent. The first harvest numbers are also out, hitting 9%, 5 points ahead of the 5-year average. Cotton in southern Alabama is getting hit by Irma. Mike Hoffman has an update in crop comments this morning. Mike?
Good morning, Clinton. Here's a picture of Irma's impact on South Alabama Monday morning. Open cotton will be hurt the worst by the storm and wind. Cotton, which hasn't opened, has a better chance of actually producing. Our next picture comes from Hawkinsville, Georgia. Trey Dunaway says a breakdown always happens on the last 100 acres with hurricanes coming. Thankfully, he got back up and running and finished his corn harvest right before Irma hit. And here's a look at the weather map. The remnants of Irma now moving into northern Alabama over the next 12 hours or so. We still have another hurricane, Jose, out in the Atlantic. We'll talk about that, have your forecast, but first here are some hometown temps.
Save time each day and receive the latest market prices directly to your cell phone with market updates. It makes it effortless to stay aware of shifting market prices. Just text Markets 8 to 31313 to get started.
Josley Batista, the former chairman of JBS Meat, has turned himself into police in Brazil after the country's Supreme Court ordered his arrest. Batista's testimony implicated Brazil's president of corruption. Until now, Batista avoiding prosecution under a plea bargain where he describes how JBS bribed dozens of politicians, including President Michel Temer. But Brazil's chief prosecutor said he's investigating whether Batista left out information from his testimony, revoking the deal with prosecutors. Now, earlier this year, President Temer was charged with corruption for allegedly orchestrating a scheme in which he would get millions of dollars in payouts for helping JBS resolve a business issue. Brazil's probe into bribes and kickbacks between companies and politicians, known as Operation Car Wash, continues to churn out new allegations. All right, as we mentioned, USDA drops its September production report today. We'll have a preview coming up, an analysis, and later, learning to fly in Cambodia. These drones are helping local agriculture with a fresh perspective. In agribusiness, cotton was down, but the stock market was higher during early trade. Let's see how the CME closed here on this Monday. Details from the floor.
A couple of factors at play in the corn market. The big yield estimate from the USDA will be the key for Tuesday's update. Keep in mind, last month, Illinois and Iowa corn yields were pegged at 188 bushels per acre. Now, a lot of the private surveys we've seen are ranging from 177 to 184 bushels per acre. If we get a 3 or 4 bushel per acre drop in U.S. yield and we translate that down into the world numbers, could end up with a world ending stock number near 192 million tons for the coming year. We're currently, USDA is at a record high, 228 million for beginning stocks. That would be one of the biggest drawdowns in world ending stocks on record, similar to 1988. And the market could have some pretty good energy after the USDA report on Tuesday. Thank you. This is Terry Rogensack from the CME Group grain floor.
Well, later today, as we said, the USDA will release its September crop production report. Tyne Morgan joins us now with a preview in today's analysis. Tyne?
Here now with Arlen Suderman with FC Stone INTL. We have this next USDA report coming out. The last USDA report pretty alarming with the 169.5 in yields. I mean, just overall higher production than expected. What would be bullish or bearish in this next report?
Well, I think to answer that question, you have to look at what's the attitude of the funds toward the commodities. And right now it's very favorable. I like what I see in money flow toward the commodities. I like Brent crude oil over $53 with WTI now trying to catch up. That's an indicator of how the funds feel toward the commodities right now. So that means as long as we don't see USDA raise their yield estimates, that tells them the worst of the supply news is behind us and we can move forward and start focusing on demand, which for beans is particularly positive. But I think that's what they're watching for. No more bearish news, no more increases in yield.
So both corn and beans, if we shave 1 bushel, 2 bushel, 3 bushel, it doesn't matter. You think shaving any yield off is positive?
Yeah, I do. Now, keep in mind that the algorithmic traders, those computers are going to be looking at the estimates that are released, programming in if it comes above or below. That's what initially gets traded. But after that initial trade, the humans take over, and I think that's the sentiment.
Overall, though, we still have these big stocks, you know, and that's kind of weighing on prices. So, and we haven't had a lot of incentive to sell recently. So do you think that stock still kind of tempers any type of rally that we could have or not?
Yeah, I do. And it's not a bullish scenario, but it's a case where the 2017 lows were higher than the 2016 lows. The 2018 lows will probably be higher than the 2017. Bull markets start very slowly and they start building momentum. This is going to take some time, but I do think we'll be a little bit better.
What's the key price point that we need to break through on both corn and beans for you to say, all right, this was a key resistance and we're moving higher?
Well, with corn, anytime you can get above $4, and we're a little ways away from that yet. Soybeans, $10 is a big one, and then above $10.50, you start getting some momentum.
Likelihood that we will break through those levels?
I think it'll take some time, and it depends on the size of this crop, but I do think that is a possibility, yes.
All right, Arlen Suderman, thanks so much for joining us. Stay with us. We have much more Ag Day when we come back.
Contact Arlen Suderman by email at arlen.suderman@intlfcstone.com.
Welcome back. Here, meteorologist Mike Hoffman, looking at these couple of systems we have on the map here, and the remnants of Hurricane Irma really looks like they're working their way north.
Yeah, it does, and it's going to be ending up in the central Mississippi Valley and then finally taking off toward the northeast. Amounts will get lighter and lighter as we move through time, though. And so as Irma winds down, we have to take a look at Jose out in the Atlantic. Now, that's been out in the Atlantic for about a week now, but it's finally showing up on our weather map. It's interesting. It's now moving eastward. It's being pulled east by this cold front. It's going to kind of do a loop and then start to come back northwestward again by this weekend. And so it's something we have to watch along the East Coast as we head through time. But for now, it's kind of sitting out there spinning its wheels. The remnants of Irma, though, there's a heavy rain in places, central Mississippi Valley, western Ohio Valley, western Tennessee Valley by later on today. There's really not much else on the map. Some weak cool fronts in the northern tier of states, the typical area of low pressure, so the afternoon showers and storms in parts of the southwest. Heading as we head through tonight, and you can see the remnants of Irma continues to move northwestward, ends up kind of stalling out over the boot heel of Missouri, it looks like, before it starts to get picked up by the jet stream and it starts to track off toward the northeast, and that will be during the day tomorrow. You can see, though, the amounts of rain probably going to be a lot lighter with this one than we've seen of some other systems that come roaring up. It looks like this one will be raining itself out over time, but there could still be a couple of inches in places in the Ohio Valley, so that's something we do have to watch. There's the precipitation estimates over the past 24 hours. Adding on the next 36 hours, what we're going to notice once we see it all get on the map here is it really doesn't put down a whole lot into the lower Great Lakes, at least through 7 p.m. Wednesday. Now it'll add a little bit more after that. But even amounts in the areas where it tracks, our computer model is only showing 1 to 2 inches of rain. So that could be good, a lot better than some systems anyway. Look at the highs underneath Irma, only in the 60s today. 90s, though, into the Dakotas. Low temperatures tonight going to drop into the 60s up and down the country from the Great Lakes all the way to the Gulf Coast, and then highs tomorrow once again under Irma in the 60s, but to the west of that 80s and 90s, some triple digits showing up in a few spots in the desert southwest. That's all because of that ridge. There's the remnants of Irma. It kind of folds into the main jet stream, as you can see there, over time, and we get a trough out west with a ridge in the east, and that changes things a little bit as far as temperatures go. It starts to warm up in the eastern parts of the country. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We'll first head to Casper, Wyoming, partly sunny, very warm. High temperature of 90 degrees today. Poplar Bluff, Missouri, well, there's the remnants of Irma. Times of rain, mostly light rain though, high of only 67. Elmira, New York, mostly sunny and nice, high of 81.
When we come back, we'll talk about the impacts of Irma on the dairy industry in Florida. That's in our dairy report. And later, while U.S. farmers continue to get more comfortable with drone technology, it's a new perspective for these farmers in Cambodia.
The Dairy Report on Ag Day is brought to you by QLF. For 40 years, QLF has been proud to support American farmers that feed the world.
Much of Florida is still in recovery mode following the coast-to-coast pummeling. Irma made landfall twice. According to our partners at the Packer, the storm caused still unknown damage to Florida's citrus and vegetable crops. And with 7 million people without power, communication has been limited. Irma is also leaving its mark on the Florida dairy industry. Florida Farm Bureau telling Mike Adams of AgriTalk that a dairy barn collapsed east of Tampa due to high winds.
HC Dairies in Lakeland had a barn collapse and trapped some cattle underneath, and they're working to try to get those and rescue those animals. Just a lot of destruction, as you would expect with a hurricane. It's terrible.
With the so-called dreamers expecting immigration action from Congress, the farm industry continues to assess its own vulnerability. Now, according to a report from Farm Credit East, if the federal government moves towards strict enforcement and deportation of illegal workers, in the state of New York alone, 1,100 farms would either go out of business or significantly reduce operations. Now, the study authors admit it's a worst-case scenario, but they do add that strict enforcement could cut ag output by a quarter, or nearly $1.2 billion. 1 million acres could drop out of production and ultimately impact 50,000 jobs both on and off the farm. Opinions continue to pour in on the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement, the administration recently announcing plans to renegotiate or even leave the deal. On the dairy side, the U.S. Dairy Export Council says South Korea is already America's #2 cheese export market, shipping nearly 94 million pounds in 2016, and they estimate trade to continue rising, up nearly 30% more in the next 5 years. Since the KORUS agreement started in 2012, cheese exports to South Korea are up in total 250%, beef 60% higher. And the National Milk Producers Federation is taking a stand on scary marketing at the grocery store. They say things like non-GMO or hormone-free labels are meant to scare consumers in certain instances. That's why they're launching the Peel Back the Label campaign. Now, it uses examples like table salt labeled as GMO-free, when GM salt isn't even possible. You can read more at peelbackthelabel.org. Well, up next, we head to the drone zone to see how this ag tech is slowly gaining acceptance around the world.
In the country, brought to you by Kubota. Learn more about Kubota SSV Series skid steers at Kubota.com or demo one at your local Kubota dealer today.
While drone use has grown leaps and bounds in the U.S., the ag technology is just gaining attention in Southeast Asia, and there's hope the drones could help protect farm workers from getting sprayed with pesticides. Cambodian farmers often use no protective gear when walking their fields and spraying their crops with potentially hazardous chemicals. Now, Cambodia's first commercial drone company, SM Waypoint, is offering farmers high-tech solutions to avoid accidental exposure to people and increase their yields. However, resistance to modern technologies like drones in favor of traditional farming practices remains a big challenge.
The container is for aerial application of fluids. It can contain pesticides, fertilizers, anything that you would spray with a human walking through the field with a pack on his back. Very, very dangerous applications of pesticides. This can do much, much safer.
In addition to the quadcopter, the company also uses a fixed-wing drone, which can measure the vegetative index. The company charges $4 per hectare to analyze the crop, but they claim the technology will help improve the value of yields by $20 per hectare. But despite the increase in yields and profits, the upfront costs involved mean drones are not affordable for most small farmers in Cambodia. And if you enjoy using new technology on your farm, be sure to make plans to attend the Farm Journal AgTech Expo. That's coming up December 11th through the 13th in Indianapolis. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Start your day with us. For Tyne Morgan and Mike Hoffman, I'm Clint Griffiths. Have a great day.
AgDay is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.